Sarita. So, Madam Chair, I will hand it over to you to call the meeting to order.
Sure. Okay, the time is now 9:34 a.m. on February 6, 2025, and we're beginning this EPAC meeting. We're going to just go around, if everybody can introduce themselves quickly and say who you represent, and if you're new, welcome, and let us know that you're new. I'm Abigail Okrant. I'm the EPAC chair. I will know you're talking about me if you use she or they pronouns, and I work for Pima County at the Department of Environmental Quality. I'm going to pass it on in the order I see it, which is to Hannah.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Oden. I'm the planning coordinator at PAG. And I'll just make a quick note. So if you're a jurisdictional representative, I'm gonna have to hop off or can't stay for the whole time. We may not use the whole time. If you could let us know just so we make sure that we maintain quorum, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll call the next then. Brendan Lyons, you're next as far as I see.
Good morning, Brendan Lyons, Government Affairs Director for Southern Arizona Home Builders. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brendan. Charles?
Good morning, Charles Stack. I'm the citizen representative for Town of Oro Valley.
Great. Brianne, you're the next person I see.
Bree Hoishman, PAG.
Elizabeth Liebold, you're the next person I see. Elizabeth, we heard you before. Can you unmute yourself? Skip you for now.
It's helpful. Elizabeth is with the city of Tucson, and she's joining as a member of our stormwater management working group that's under EPAC.
Thanks, Mead. Paula, you're the next person that pops up on my screen.
Hi, Paula Bloomer, Town of Marana.
And the vice chair of EPAC.
And the vice chair.
Dawn is the next person I see.
Good morning, Dawn Garcia with PAG.
Blue Baldwin.
Good morning, everybody. Blue Baldwin with the City of Tucson. I manage the Storm to Shade program.
Kimberly Biza. You're muted, Kim.
Kimberly Biza with Pima County Wastewater.
Great. Now my order is a little screwy. I think David Mack.
Dave Mack, an ADOT Industrial Stormwater Coordinator.
Great. Becca, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name.
I think that's me, Becca Kamak, Director of Planning and Environmental Programs at Tucson Airport Authority. Morning.
Morning. Chris Gold.
Hi, Chris Gold with Town of Marana.
Chris, can you turn your volume up a little bit and try that again? Or speak closer to your microphone?
Yeah, sure thing. Chris Gold with the Town of Marana. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you. Alexandra Chavez.
Good morning. Alexandra Chavez with the Town of Oro Valley. Thank you.
Melanie, you're the next person I see.
Melanie Alvarez, Planning Coordinator with Pima Association of Governments.
Natalie.
Good morning. I'm Natalie Shep. I'm the Climate and Community Engagement Manager with the Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Thanks. Katie.
I'm Katie Predick. I'm a conservation scientist at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum.
Great. Andrew.
Andrew Agnew, citizen rep for City of Tucson.
Nicole.
Good morning. This is Nicole Gillette. Oh wait, which Nicole? Do we have?
Yeah, it's you.
I'll go and then maybe I'll pass it over to Nicole K. Spear. I'm Nicole Gillette with the City of Tucson, and I'll toss it over to Nicole.
Nicole K. Spear, project manager with Regional Flood Control District at Pima County.
Great. Apologies if I mispronounce this next person's name. Idelise.
Hi, my name is Moyet from the town of Sahuarita, project manager.
Michael Catanzaro.
Hi there, Michael Catanzaro, Energy Manager for the City of Tucson.
Luke.
Morning, folks. Luke Cole, direct the Santa Cruz River program at the Sonoran Institute, and I'm crawling my way down Speedway. Good morning, everybody.
And using a hands-free device, I'm sure. Howard.
Oh, no.
Howard Myers, citizen.
Lydia.
Good morning, everyone. Lydia Barker Winkworth. I'm with the City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility.
Chris McVie.
Good morning, everybody. Chris McVie, representing the Tucson Audubon Society.
Jeanette.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Jeanette Duran, the Transportation Planning Director at PAG. I oversee air, water quality, and GIS. I might not be able to stay for the whole meeting, but I'm here, and if you need anything, let me know.
Dustin.
Morning, everyone. Dustin Fitzpatrick, Environmental Planning Administrator at PAG.
Great. Did I miss anyone?
Me. I'm Mead Meyer-Welburn, and I apparently misspelled my name in my own registration. I'm a planning manager in the integrated planning section at PAG. Oversee watershed planning, so very excited to see the presentation today, and also the map department. And the watershed planning subcommittee, we have some of our members here today from there as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And Madam Chair, I do see a phone number that's calling in. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah. Phone person, can you unmute yourself and tell us who you are? When you figure it out, let us know. Did we miss anyone else?
This is Elizabeth, City of Tucson. I'm just listening in again. This time I actually can say hello.
Can you hear me?
Hi, everybody.
Oh, the representative is calling in. I think I just heard you speak.
Yeah, sorry. There's been some issues on my end over here. My Zoom link has not been working whatsoever, so I'm just calling in here on my phone. This is Camden Walsh, representing the San Javier district, and I am new to the planning department.
Great. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Hannah, I think we can move on to agenda item 2.
Great. So I will go ahead and just read this slide. So this is our in-kind form reporting. So regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds.
Thanks. Next item is the approval of the December 12th EPAC meeting summary. I move to approve the meeting summary. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. I'd like to call a vote on this. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, well, if there are no objections to the voice vote, I think we'll call it passed. Next issue is a presentation by Blue Baldwin. I'm gonna let Blue introduce the presentation and themselves.
Thank you, Abigail. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, many friends in the audience and potential new friends. My name is Blue Baldwin, and I manage the Storm to Shade program at the City of Tucson, which is the city's green stormwater infrastructure program. And I've been in this position for 4 years now, having come from a background in many different sustainability related fields, primarily rainwater harvesting, which is what we used to call, what we're now calling green stormwater infrastructure. And I have a master's in public health from the University of Arizona. And I'm just going to dive in, take it away. So to get everyone sort of situated in context, Storm to Shade was created at the request of the City of Tucson's mayor and council to be part of the city's Tucson Resilient Together climate action plan. And so that is sort of how we fit in the larger context of the City of Tucson. We have integrated into Tucson Water's One Water philosophy, which states that we are managing all of our water resources that are available to us for maximum benefit, and that includes stormwater. And that's the graphic on the left. And then the graphic on the right is one that may be familiar to many of you, which shows the various water resources that have been served to the City of Tucson over the years, where you see that dark blue mass being groundwater. And then you see a sharp decline in groundwater when CAP water was introduced. And then you see the purple pipe water, that's our reclaimed. And then you see this little green line skirting across the top of the graph starting around 2010. And that little green line represents stormwater. That line is not to scale by any means, but the intent is to show that the city has adopted stormwater as one of our many water resources to be managed. This is how we sit. So again, Storm to Shade sits within the Department of Tucson Water, the City of Tucson. Our division is called Conservation and Stormwater Resources. So the Conservation and Stormwater Resources division contains our conservation program, which is the program at Tucson Water that does things like provide rebates for low water use appliances, provides K through 12 education, provides training to landscape professionals via the Smartscape program, provides rebates for installing rainwater harvesting cisterns and now rainwater harvesting basins residentially as well. And coming soon is a rebate for turf removal and replacement with native landscape. And we sneak preview, we're just beginning, we're just taking on a new staff who was very recently hired, starts Monday, to stand up that program. So that's coming soon and is very exciting. So all of that is what lives in the conservation program. We are a sister program to the conservation program with our own dedicated source of funding, which comes from a small fee on your Tucson water utility statement. If you live within the City of Tucson only, this fee is not assessed outside of the city. The fee is 13 cents per CCF of water consumed, so that's 748 gallons. And that averages to $1, actually a little less, per household. The fee is assessed to both residential and commercial customers inside the City of Tucson. And with those funds, we have two primary mandates. One is to build new green stormwater infrastructure throughout the city. So that's our capital program. And the other is to maintain existing green stormwater infrastructure and anything that we build. And so we have dedicated budgets for each of those actions. Again, objective number one of the Storm to Shade program is to build new green stormwater infrastructure, and that's what you see in this photo. Objective number two is to maintain new and any existing green stormwater infrastructure that was built. There's a lot of it, as you all are probably well aware, throughout the city that was built through various city programs and grassroots work since the early 2000s, if not before that, with no maintenance program attached to them. So it was very clear that we would have a maintenance program built into the funding for the Storm to Shade program. And in doing these two things, building and maintaining, we are prioritizing equity as our driver for our investments, both in terms of where we construct new GSI and where we put our dollars to maintain GSI. So our program, unlike most programs, GSI programs in the country, is non-regulatory driven. We are in it for the co-benefits. So we are not the agency at the city that maintains the MS4 permit. That would be Elizabeth, who's on this call. Rather, we are harvesting and using stormwater to add greenery and vegetation in the urban environment for all of the other wonderful environmental and community benefits that provides, primarily shading and cooling. Tucson is the third fastest warming city in North America after Phoenix and Las Vegas. And so our primary driver is to mitigate that warming by adding vegetation, which every little plant acts as a small evaporative cooling unit via the process of photosynthesis. So when plants photosynthesize, they release moisture, and that moisture cools the ambient temperature around them. And then when we add shrubs and tree canopy, we're also shading surfaces. And we know that the difference between the temperature of a surface in the shade and a surface out in direct sun can be as much as 15 degrees. I actually recently was in a talk where somebody said in Phoenix, they measured a difference of 30 degrees between a shaded area and a non-shaded area, which is not hard to imagine when you think of Phoenix in the summer and all that pavement. And so that's really one of our biggest drivers. We're also creating habitat for our native critters inside of the city. We're also pulling stormwater off of streets, which don't like to have water running down them. It degrades pavement. So we're pulling it off of pavement, putting it in the ground, encouraging plant growth, infiltration, percolation, and reducing minor flooding. So again, we are not Pima County Regional Flood Control District, which is concerned with mitigating floodwaters. We are not the MS4 permit that is concerned with water quality. We do take a small chunk out of both of those issues, but our primary drivers are non-regulatory. Hopping back to the equity piece, we use something called tree equity score in order to understand which parts of the city of Tucson are most in need of added green stormwater infrastructure. So if you look at this map, you can see that there are areas of the city ranging in colors from a deep red to a nice deep green. Then those indicate how all of these factors that go into calculating the score come out. So the variables that we look at are existing tree canopy, population density, surface temperature, race, income, employment, age, and health. And so when we smush all of these things together, this image is what pops out. And so we are able to use this to help us make decisions about whether or not we are going to build new green stormwater infrastructure projects and whether or not we are going to dedicate maintenance funds to GSI in certain areas of Tucson. And so we tend to prioritize those high and moderately high areas of the city for those investments. We are recently transitioning into a even cooler model, which is called the Tucson Equity Tree Index, which is very similar to this map, but it is broken down into smaller data blocks. And so it's even more specific. This is a really interesting image to look at to better understand the equity conversation. So on this map of Tucson, you can see the black lines differentiating the various wards within the city. And then the pie chart on the right shows you the number of existing green stormwater infrastructure assets in each of those wards. So the big story here is the vast majority, well, not the majority, but nearly half of all existing green stormwater infrastructure, this is GSI that existed before Storm to Shade was launched, was located in Ward 6. And Ward 6 is also the greenest part of the city and scores the lowest on tree equity score as far as being a priority for investment. And so the mission of Storm to Shade in its equity approach is to bring every other ward of the city up to Ward 6. It's not to say we are no longer investing necessarily, but we are investing first and foremost in those places that need it more. So this is a map, and I wish that I could overlay this on the last one, but just kind of if you take a look at this and you think of Ward 6 sort of as the center of the map, and then we look at this one. This map shows the projects that Storm to Shade presently has underway, with the green projects being complete, the red ones being under construction, and the yellow being planned. So you can see that the projects that we have in the hopper tend to be in those areas that were of higher need. And so this is just a screen grab from our webpage on the Tucson Climate Hub. If you Google Storm to Shade Tucson, this will be the first page that pops up. You're welcome to take a look yourself. It's really cool and fun to look through because each of these project flags has a little story map attachment on the right side. So you can scroll through and look at the various projects that we have going on throughout the city, what their primary objectives are, and what their status is. Just to give an example of the kinds of projects that we have completed so far and those that we take on. This is El Rio Neighborhood Center. This is in Ward 1, which is on the western side of Tucson. El Rio Neighborhood Center contains a library, early childhood resources, just a variety of different user groups go there and use this center. I know kids from Monzo Elementary just down the street end up here after school often. And so our partners at Parks who manage this facility brought this spot to our attention to say, hey, maybe we can do some GSI and rainwater harvesting here to enhance the beauty of the place and to utilize all this stormwater that comes off of these large rooftop surfaces. And so you've got a before picture on the left and an after picture on the right. It's looking incredibly lush and green, and there are lots of little critters around there. And all of that water that used to just flow right off of these impervious surfaces and that compacted earth onto the street and into storm drains is now getting infiltrated locally into the soil. Here's another one. Unfortunately, these photos are not before and after, but these are two different areas. If you can imagine the entirety of what you see in this image being just that flat, compacted, bare dirt, that was what was here before these basins were built and the plants were added. So this is Iron Horse Park. This again was a collaborative project with the Department of Parks and Recreation via a 407 bond improvement. We were asked if there was potential to add GSI here, and we were able to pull water off of 10th Street, which is the street that you catch a glimpse of on the right side of each of these photos, via sidewalk scuppers into large swale type basins. And we're pulling water off of 10th and also First Avenue. And this is just adjacent to Arroyo Chico. This was really a project that the neighborhood wanted to see because there was a lot of just not happy, not good activity happening in this area of the park because it wasn't used, it wasn't visited. So now we have a walking path, some picnic benches, some art, and some signage. And so this area has been activated, and I think the surrounding neighborhood is happy to see that. This was an interesting project that was brought to us by the Ward 3 Council Office. So we check in with our ward offices on a regular basis because they're boots on the ground as far as knowing what's happening in their neighborhoods and communities. And they brought to our attention that there's an intersection at 11th and Flores that TPD was actually planning to shut down using barricades because of the volume of drive-through crime that was happening here. And they asked if we could do anything to beautify and activate this area. And so fortunately, there are very large rights of way around this intersection and plenty of stormwater flowing down the street. And so as you can see below, we're able to pull stormwater off of that street to narrow the street where traffic still can pass through, and to add dozens and dozens of trees and shrubs. So this shot comes directly from our annual report, which was completed at the end of this past fiscal year. So this is data from June 30th, 2025. And so this is what we've done to date. We have constructed 225,000 square feet of GSI at an average cost of $9.36 per square foot. When we calculate the volume of all the GSI that we have built, it's about 668,000 gallons of capacity with 424 new trees. And we have removed 7,200 square feet of pavement or concrete or replaced impervious surface. Switching gears into our maintenance program now. So as I mentioned previously, there was a lot of green stormwater infrastructure that existed throughout the city of Tucson prior to the launch of Storm to Shade. Most of this was built with memorandums of understanding in place with the neighborhoods and communities who were involved and wanted to see this GSI built. Over time, a lot of those agreements with neighbors and communities just sort of fall apart. People move away, or they get older and don't have capacity anymore. And for one reason or another, folks aren't always able to maintain the GSI that was built in their community as planned. And so it was very clear to the architects of the Storm to Shade program that we wanted to have a dedicated funded maintenance program. And so it was a very happy coincidence that shortly after Storm to Shade launched in January of 2021, and I was first hired, we were approached by partners at the University of Arizona, Andrea Gerlach, to be specific, who said, hey, would you all have use for some funding that could help to create a GSI manual set of best practices for maintenance? And we were absolutely delighted that this opportunity came about because we knew we were going to have to craft this at some point. And so we set about doing that in partnership with U of A, and were able to, through this process, reach out to so many partners and get input from so many stakeholders that interact with or have engagement with GSI throughout the community. So everyone from organizations like Watershed Management Group, which has been building GSI for a very long time, to ward office representatives, to landscape companies, to research and academic partners at the University of Arizona. It all culminated in a very large several-hour event in the depths of COVID with 52 people on a Zoom and multiple Zoom rooms to really dig into the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of what is proper maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure. Out of that, we were able to distill what we found to be the most salient points and practices, and then develop trainings, modules, based on those principles, which in the beginning were conducted, again, entirely on Zoom, and all comers were welcome. So folks from the city of Tucson, from Pima County, from landscaping companies, and anybody from the general public who is interested was invited to attend. We conducted them in English and in Spanish. And then we began to pilot these methods. And at the end, we had this little book. That graphic of the Palo Brea tree is the cover page of our pocket guide that is Green Stormwater Infrastructure Maintenance Manual, which is our reference for the proper maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure. That being said, what we have landed on is the proper maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure is first and foremost about the health of the landscape and supporting the landscape so that it can best provide benefits to the community and the environment. The one thing that trumps health of the landscape is health and human safety. And that's where sometimes we have to do some pruning or plant removal in order to make sure that health and human safety are maintained. So once we got our protocol established and did some trainings, we published an RFP to be able to hire external contractors to actually do this maintenance work. We knew that we were not going to be able to rely on our internal city resources, who are often overstretched and under-resourced as it is. And so we knew we wanted to be able to hire external contractors to do this work. We set them out first to find all the GSI that could be found throughout the entire city. So we now have a green stormwater infrastructure asset inventory, which is also available on that Storm to Shade Climate Action Hub page. You can look at the map of where all the GSI in Tucson is located. You can see what kind of GSI it is, when it was built, who built it, all sorts of cool stuff. And then we started deploying these contractors to perform maintenance on these assets, many of which had been neglected for years and years and years. So in that top photo, you see Andy Pieper of Productive Patches. He's taking measurements of that basin in order to be able to calculate the volume of it. So we do have a number that is our best guess at total volume that can be contained in all of the GSI throughout Tucson. But you also see that it is overrun with Bermuda grass and probably might be some buffalo grass in there, and in need of work. So this was early days of really doing a lot of backlog labor because these assets hadn't been maintained in several years. So these 6 contractors got to work on a regular schedule. And over the last few years, have been removing a lot of buffalo and Bermuda grass, and restoring the capacity and functionality of these basins. We hit our target budget exactly in our very first year of doing maintenance, and we now are exceeding it every year since. And so we're going to have to shift our rebudget for our maintenance, given that we continue to discover new assets throughout the city, and we're also building new assets constantly, both within Storm to Shade and then when Pima County Regional Flood Control District builds projects that are flood control and flood mitigation, and we take on the maintenance of those, that's a whole additional tranche of maintenance work that needs to be done. We also have done something which is pretty novel for green stormwater infrastructure programs throughout North America, which is we have an enterprise asset management system, which is designed for asset management of things like the Tucson water utility. And so we smushed green stormwater infrastructure assets into Tucson Water's asset management system. This was not an easy task at all to put things like inlets and outlets and trees into a system built for pipes and valves and well sites. But we did it, and that has really paid off in spades, given the data that we're able to collect from that system, and also the automation of ordering work and then follow-up work orders as well. So that is pretty cool. And then back to trainings, we are still offering trainings in the maintenance of green stormwater infrastructure. We try to get all City of Tucson staff who ever might interact with GSI. So that would be anybody who works in a streets crew with DTM, parks, groundskeepers, environmental services workers. We are trying collaboratively with other city departments to get everybody through both a basic City of Tucson Smartscape condensed class, and then have them go on to take additional classes that are specifically for the maintenance of GSI and also urban forestry. And now we're going to pivot to projects that we do in collaboration with Flood Control District at Pima County. So this was a really awesome development where a couple of visionary folks at both Flood Control District and the City of Tucson put their heads together and charted a way forward for Flood Control District to be able to invest in building these large flood mitigation projects within the City of Tucson. For various mostly logistical reasons, Flood Control District didn't have the ability to build facilities inside of the city. But when Storm to Shade launched as a program with a maintenance program built into it, an opportunity was recognized to where flood control invests upfront in the construction, in the design, doing the design in-house, and then the construction of these projects. And then after an establishment period, the long-term maintenance of these projects gets handed over to Storm to Shade. And so this little section on the right, before this IGA was created that allowed us to have this collaboration, Seneca and Ritchie basins had been built and were sort of in had some loose maintenance agreements with the city, but nothing that was very solid or reliable. But since this agreement, Flood Control District has been able to build Cherry Avenue Park Basin, the El Vado Food Forest, Sunland Vista Basin, which is the one we're looking at in this photo. This is a before photo, by the way. And then we recently completed together Alvernon Basin, and then we have 2 more in the works. And so this has been just a massive opportunity to add green stormwater infrastructure at a scale that Storm to Shade is not able to, because we are working with an entirely different budget that's much smaller. And so these projects do meet Flood Control District's goals of flood mitigation, but they also meet Storm to Shade's goals of providing all of those co-benefits that green stormwater infrastructure brings. Vegetation, shading, habitat, beautification. It's pretty exciting. And again, so this was the before picture of Sunland Vista, which is kind of a long wash, very wide, in the Las Vistas neighborhood down around 36th Street and Campbell. This is a very populated, densely populated neighborhood, lots of kids, 2 schools located in this neighborhood. So this area was traversed a lot by people. It's smack dab in the middle of a very densely populated neighborhood. And so these are the plans. As you can see, multiple trees and basins added, a DG walking path on either side. And then this is a little shot of what it looks like now. So we're able to add some informational signage about the partnership, a picnic bench, again, DG walking paths. So every time we're out there maintaining or checking on this spot, there are people using these walking paths for exercise. And a lot of kids walking to and from school use them as well. So a huge win of a project. Here's another shot of it. And so really providing a lovely benefit to this community. And that's just one example. There are many, many others that have been built and will continue to be built. And now finally, just wanted to touch on our outreach and public engagement program. So Xochitl Coronado Vargas, who's the person in the hat in the top left photo, is our public outreach coordinator. She's really the face of the Storm to Shade program in the community. She is the person that when there is a new GSI project that we're scoping or being proposed, she reaches out to the surrounding community and hosts opportunities for community members to have input about what they both what they would like to see and what they may have hesitation around in terms of a new green stormwater infrastructure program or project coming to their community. And so she is out and about a lot and does a lot of collaboration with Flood Control District, namely Nicole, who's on this call, around those projects as well. And that's it. I'm ending on a photo of another, this is the Seneca Basin, so another collaboration between Flood Control District and the City of Tucson, where Flood Control District built this project and Storm to Shade now maintains it. Imagine questions, time for questions or comments?
So thank you so much for that great presentation. I think we may have lost our chair. So I'll go ahead and I can help facilitate some of the questions. But Chuck, I see that you have your hand up.
Mm-hmm. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Right. Blue, thank you for maintaining your stance in favor and emphasizing equity in what you're doing. Really, really important. You know, I was at the 2025 Heat Summit just the other day in Tucson, and Mayor Romero was there, and she kind of joked about it nervously, but don't stop. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks so much for saying that, Charles. It's really wonderful to hear that coming from the community and to hear the community supports this as well. We actually, I'll let a cat out of the bag, a kitten out of the bag. It's not a huge development, but we really are presently working on proposing a new model for the way that our investments are directed. Presently, and based on the way that the program was presented to mayor and council initially, our total amount of funding was to be distributed equally across the 6 wards of the city, and with the mayor's office having her own equal distribution as well. So basically take this pot of money and divide it into 7 pieces. And that's how it would be spent for the construction part. And that is not truly equitable, because if we spend the same amount of money in those wards that already have a lot of GSI, then we're just exacerbating inequality. And so we have had a lot of conversations with our Tucson water directors, several of our mayor and council members, to say, you know, to describe what I just described, and they have said, we completely understand. Please bring us a proposal for how you would like to see it structured differently. And so that's what we're working on now, where funding will be decoupled with each ward, and we can direct it where it's most needed.
All right, and I did receive word that Abby is trying to reconnect. But yeah, so if there's any other questions, I think, Mia, did you have a question?
Some starter discussion points. I wanted to thank Blue as well. It's so cool to see what impact your leadership has had in the community and even more broadly. I wanted to bring up that in case others didn't notice on our agenda, we have extra time for discussion. Today we're doing a little different EPAC format where we have one primary speaker to allow you greater discussion time. So don't hold back. But just as a little prompt, I thought I'd say again to that point of like Storm to Shade being such a model program for the region, the next topic on the agenda is the top issues list. And I don't know if you're as familiar, Blue, but it presents what are the annual issues, but also what are the recommended strategies and accomplishments in our region. So Storm to Shade has been recognized as one of those great accomplishments to address so many different issues, like the regulated and unregulated, as you pointed out. And being a model program that these other jurisdictions on the call might be looking to, when you're invited to just present across the nation or even across the world, you've been presenting, what are some of the like most what are some of the comments that really stand out that give insight to how to manage things locally or the strengths of your program?
So, okay, one thing is going back to that theme of the fact that we're non-regulatory driven. Within the North American context, because we're part of an organization called the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange, which is really at its heart just a networking organization, but it also does an incredible job of bringing up and coalescing knowledge from GSI programs throughout North America, so US and Canada, around best practices, around maintenance, around construction, down to construction details. A lot of conversations about equity and working with community happening there. But whenever we're in these rooms with all these other programs, whether they're run by a municipality or a utility, the fact that we are non-regulatory just provides us with so much more freedom to build GSI opportunistically and bring all of those benefits without it being tied to an MS4 permit or some other requirement based on being a stormwater utility. Allows us to be a lot more, I think, sort of experimental and learn as we go, which is really important in this phase of green stormwater infrastructure. When you look at that whole concept sort of as, from a really zoomed out perspective, because this is new. This way of managing water in a modern, developed context, where we have changed the landscape to such a great extent that we really need to learn new ways of managing stormwater runoff. We have to try things. We have to be able to try different things. And so that's one of the things that I think is one of our strengths, is that we're building so many different kinds of projects in so many different kinds of contexts, and are able to watch and learn. And so that would be number 2, is the watching and learning is enabled by the fact that we have a funded maintenance program. And that's another thing that so many GSI programs do not have. Maintenance, O&M is like the unsexy part of GSI. Like, everybody loves to think about and talk about new projects and envision them, but then it's like, when it comes to making sure that that thing remains functional and is serving the purposes that it was designed to, the conversation really, really shifts. And so having a funded maintenance program is also huge, because that allows us to continually monitor all of these assets to see what's working and what's not working, and then to be able to tweak and modify our designs so that stuff works better. That is also helping us to create this in a workforce that has so much potential to grow, to be this green jobs. Like when we think about green jobs, like what are we thinking? Are we thinking about like installing solar panels? I think is what comes to most people's minds. But the proper maintenance and care for landscapes which are considered part of a city's infrastructure is huge. Like, and it is a skill set. It is not regular old, like mow, blow, and go, as people say, landscape maintenance. It is a specialized skill set that really deserves to be elevated and to be well-paid jobs that have room for growth and expansion. And so in our program, the maintenance program is where we see massive opportunities to help support a workforce. That is one that folks can be part of and feel proud of and feel like they're contributing to a healthier environment. They're part of the solution, not the problem. And so that's really exciting. So there are those two things. I thought I had one other thing in mind. Oh, I know. Another thing that I feel really proud of about Storm to Shade is that on our staff, many of us came from a very like the grassroots rainwater harvesting community in Tucson. I came up through Watershed Management Group. I worked for Brad Lancaster for a little while. This is all when I was like in my early 20s and trying to figure out what to do with my life. I met the person who is presently my boss and supervisor, James, at Watershed Management Group. Others of us on staff worked for Tucson Clean and Beautiful doing this kind of work. And so when I was hired into this position, get it like with the honor of being able to help build and, you know, like launch this program, it was very, very clear to me that this was an amazing opportunity to bring that community along. And that community has so much depth of knowledge from work that folks have been doing, building this stuff for years and years and years, deep experts in green stormwater infrastructure. And so again, via our maintenance program, we're able to employ a lot of these people who have this deep grassroots expertise. And we're able to hire them to be our design consultants. And so I think that, you know, often there's this huge disconnect between what's happening at like the city, in my case, you know, it would be the county for many of you in the room, and just folks who are doing good work. And there's this chasm. And so it was really important to me to try to bridge that chasm by bringing these people who are experts into the conversation, being able to pay them for their expertise and knowledge, and really just to feel like we're all rowing in the same direction.
That's awesome to hear.
Mm.
And you've been how many years in place now? 5 or 6?
It was just 4 in January. Only 4 feels like forever.
It does. Can you reflect a bit on the changes you've seen, not just within your program, but I'm interested in because you have to work across departments and even across jurisdictions. Were there some hurdles at first that like others who might start a program like this might see, and did you learn some lessons from that? And I know Nicole Gillette is on the call too, and she likewise was the first urban forestry manager. I'm sorry if I said your title wrong, but she might have insight on that type of situation as well.
Yeah. Nicole and I have been in the same boat since the early days. We were hired just a month or 2 apart from each other. And Nicole, the program Nicole runs, the urban forestry program at the city of Tucson, and Storm to Shade, were these 2 programs that that the mayor and council really wanted to see launched as solutions to our climate issues, and this insane rate of warming that we're dealing with. And so before urban forestry and storm to shade existed, Tucson Water had its conservation program, which is a really robust program and has been doing awesome work for a very long time. But it didn't really have the visibility, I guess, working in the public sphere. It was more, targeting residential Tucson Water customers. And so the fact that urban forestry and storm to shade work on public property throughout the city, I think brings in a next level of awareness to these programs. And so I think Nicole and I were lucky because we had a mandate from the mayor and council, who represent the citizens of this city, to do this work. And so, yeah, we have had and we continue to have some hurdles. It's really hard to move a big ship and to get things, just to recreate systems and processes. Working with people at the city who are already like really stretched for resources, time, staff, and then on top of all those things, to ask them to do things differently is not always an easy conversation to have. But we've been having them, and we've just been pushing and pushing. What we try to do is to bring opportunities to them, like, let us serve you up, this thing that you can easily say yes to. Please send us 5 people from your department to undergo this training next month. It'll only take a few hours of their time, and the impact that those kinds of small offerings can have is great. Then another thing Storm to Shade is able to do, which has had, I think, gotten us into a really nice position with both parks and Department of Transportation Mobility, is anything that is GSI, we're able to take off of their plates for maintenance. So we've created maps that show where exactly in every city park is a GSI area. And that is literally basically off limits to parks to maintain. That is no longer within their scope to maintain those areas. And it's the same for DTM. When DTM gets a call from a constituent that a tree is down in a traffic circle, DTM gets to call us rather than having to deal with that work themselves. So we're really trying to, to be team players and to say we may ask things of you from time to time, but we're also providing these opportunities for you and trying to take work off of your plate. And we've had great success. And at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. I know that's so trite and so cheesy, but it really is. And we've really tried to bring people together in kind of fun ways that aren't just your everyday in the office grindy kind of situation, but like, hey, let's all meet out in a park and talk about some specific aspect of the maintenance of this park or the trees in this park, and just find ways to have conversations, but also to relate to one another more as people. It's very helpful. I see a couple hands raised. Mead, can I call on people? Okay. I know Kimberly had her hand up earlier, and now I see Jeanette. Kimberly. Maybe not. Jeanette.
Thanks, Blue. And if Kimberly has a question, she can jump in front of me, but I did want to thank you for coming. Our experience at PAG has been that the Regional Flood Control District has been a fantastic partner on all sorts of projects, our transportation projects specifically, and our bike ped projects specifically. You talked a lot about your internal partnerships with within the city and the different departments, but can you elaborate or go a little further on those partnerships with other jurisdictions and people that are in that regulatory space that their funding is a little bit more constrained due to the regulations, but those partnerships are still really, really valuable and really successful, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience working with the other jurisdictions and the other utility agencies that are not city-run agencies?
Sure. Yeah, and full disclosure right up front, there are not a lot of them. I think in part it's just because Storm to Shade is still relatively new. I mean, I was hired in January of 21, and then it took us a year to get fully staffed up, and then we had to figure out how we were going to start building stuff, and we had to stand up a maintenance program. So I feel like we're kind of only just hitting our stride. Just to say, I think there's a lot of potential for partnerships that are but a twinkle in our eye at this point. But the partnership with Flood Control District has been awesome, amazing. As I said, just Flood Control District's ability to build these big projects that are flood mitigation projects, but that also meet the goals of green stormwater infrastructure is a total game changer. And wonderful. And we love working with Flood Control District. We've also been doing some projects with TEP based on agreements between the city and TEP about like new line siting routes and new substation construction, like these infrastructure improvements that TEP has to make to ensure that we all have power when it's 120 degrees in the summer. When those projects happen, we have been invited to get involved and to help out with landscape improvements around in proximity to those. So one good example is the Aviation Greenway, which is on Escalante from Kolb to Calle Polar, which is just where Escalante turns north at the west end. It's along the Boneyard. It's one of those areas that you can see all the old planes. And TEP needed to build a new substation at the corner of Kolb and Escalante. Something that was offered by TEP was a whole giant slew of trees in the ground. And we were able to take that offer and kind of parlay it into an entire green stormwater infrastructure landscape. So we got trees and we got this beautiful rainwater harvesting landscape to put them in. We're presently talking with TEP about the Midtown Reliability Project and where that siting is going to go. It's a huge project and it's in many different areas of the city, but we are really hoping that we'll be able to see some improvements in the areas along that route that are of the highest need for investment. So that's something that hopefully we'll see come down the line in the coming years. We have not partnered with any other municipalities outside of those at this point. So Jeanette, we would love to. We have a former City of Tucson staff who's now at City of Marana, and I know that I think it's Paula is on the call. Is it from Marana? And we would love to talk about ways of collaborating. I don't know exactly what that looks like at this point, but yeah.
That's great. And thanks for pointing that out. It sounds like it's off to a good start, right? You start with one solid partner at the county and then also making a partnership with a utility. And then from there it grows. So good work. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
All right, and it's on the attendee side, but it looks like Elizabeth has her hand up.
Hi, Elizabeth. Is she there?
Elizabeth, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Looks like you're still muted.
I can just chime in until Elizabeth speaks up. So Elizabeth is the city's stormwater manager in the Department of Transportation and Mobility. And so something that we haven't really had much opportunity to do yet, but that we really look forward to is working with Elizabeth on those MS4 permit applications to incorporate green stormwater infrastructure into those applications as retrofits. And so look, there she is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you are.
that's I wanted to pop in and speak to that. The City of Tucson Floodplain Administration signed a special memo and made an agreement with Pima County Regional Flood Control District to help Tucson Water on these water harvesting projects. And like Blue was saying, our floodplain administration and floodplain management staff is understaffed, and so it worked out really well to have Pima County assist with these water harvesting and all the storm to shade projects that you're seeing here, with the funding, especially for these the construction, and they are in turn supposed to be complying with our floodplain regulations. So that's how it's supposed to be working. But this has been a great opportunity for our City of Tucson Floodplain Administration, because we're able to allow the county to assist Tucson Water with the storm to shade projects. And then speaking about the retrofits, the MS4 permit is requiring us to look at a special report and consider certain types of it was specifically green infrastructure that ADQ wanted to see. And so we're developing a report, and I need to sit down with Blue and her team and talk about our draft retrofit to look at how we can utilize certain types of water harvesting features to reduce stormwater pollutants, because I believe the Australians, and I'm sure there's some Americans as well, that are looking at certain types of plants that are able to make a difference in stormwater quality issues. So we have certain things that have certain analytes that are exceeding our stormwater permit requirements, and we're saying, well, we're looking at maybe how these types of features could help us reduce that. So that's just a side project that we will be working with Storm to Shade on. I wanted to share that with you guys, and also commend Blue on her very successful leadership on our green infrastructure program. This has been it does reflect the citizens of the city. The citizens of the City of Tucson have been very pro water harvesting, green infrastructure, LID. And I think that in itself, because we have a community that's interested in that, it really helps have this program work so well. And then with Blue's leadership, this has become a very, very successful program. And as a civil engineer, I just want to say, let's just watch out for that maintenance. Don't let it eat up your budget. So design carefully, and we're going to continue to see a lot of successful projects come out. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
All right. And Madam Chair, I'm thinking we might need to wrap this agenda item up in the next maybe 10 minutes or so. But I do see you have your hand up.
Thanks. I just thought I'd add on to some of the past points made. There may be an opportunity. It was so interesting to hear your background is in health. And I was thinking, as you're talking about the partnerships that have grown with Regional Flood Control District, that the Pima County Health Department is also an interesting connection, because Julie Robinson is there doing, I think her goal is something climate related. And the drought response plan is even housed within the health department at the county. And so it seems like a good connection there, and that the low impact development working group is always a good place too, for places like Elizabeth to find out the studies that have been done locally on green infrastructure impacts on water quality. And Blue's group is a great contributor to the LID working group. And my final point, and I'm hoping these ideas just spur others to chime in. It was really exciting to hear you talk about the map updates that you're working on, and that you're looking at smaller data blocks for your equity index. I think that's something we can learn from as well in our regional resiliency planning map that has our multi-factor vulnerability analysis for other jurisdictions in the region to use. And the exciting news is that our Ecopia data is recently out. For those who haven't heard about it, it is, we have a new method we've been playing with using a consultant who uses AI to interpret our orthophotography that we get every approximately 2 years in the region. They can read where the tree canopy is much more readily. So we would have tree canopy data available far more frequently to assess where drought impacts are, to assess where there's large tree die-off, if it's happening increasingly with the large Aleppo pines, or even the impacts of planting efforts. So that data is now available. We're just sending out the announcements, new tree canopy data, and much more. The Copia data includes every inch of ground has a land classification available, and 3D data.
Whoa, that sounds really cool, Mead.
Yeah, I wanna help work with others to get it utilized.
Yeah. Yeah, let's set up a time to talk to you guys about that with Nicole.
Super.
That's really exciting. This is Nicole. And the other sort of upcoming data announcement I'll make is that our tree inventory is done. So on the city side, we're working to update many of our data sets related to tree canopy, and then integrating in with all of our other asset management systems. So including the GSI asset data layer, but that will all be shortly available too. And I do think we're overdue at this point for maybe just a data afternoon where we bring everyone together to try to bring all these tools together and give everyone sort of the same decision-making tool set. So we're all utilizing the same data and all sort of moving in the same direction. So I think that'd be really fun.
Data afternoon, let's do it. I see Christy has a hand raised.
Hey, I just want to say what a wonderful presentation. How exciting. What a tremendous job you all have done in a very short time, really, when you think about it. My question is, in terms of both your work and Nicole Gillette's work, when you are looking at these inventories, are you taking into account all of the land that Tucson Water owns in the Avra Valley as well? And do any of these efforts perhaps, well, at least in terms of inventorying, do they apply to those city-owned lands? Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. No, not for Storm to Shade. Nicole, do you look at Avra Valley at all?
So James and I, Tucson Water, have had many conversations about how to handle that property. We ultimately did not include that, Chris, in the tree inventory because we were really focused on the urban properties for that. But there are opportunities to expand that into not just that property, but a lot of other sort of large, what we might call unmaintained swaths of property throughout the city and potentially even outside the city. It might just look a little bit different on the data set, but we definitely want to expand it so that we can be accounting for things like carbon capture, stormwater capture, and all those other co-benefits that Blue talked about. So that's definitely in the plans for expansion. And my other sort of maybe offer / request to all the folks on this call would be, now that we have this data set and also we'll be bringing that into our ARC Online system, I would love to start working with other jurisdictions on expanding that data set beyond our sort of not arbitrary, but somewhat arbitrary city boundaries, where it just doesn't make sense to have the data just stop there. I know I've talked with Pima County and PAG before about, bringing in our surrounding jurisdictions so that we all have a complete data set, so that we can be looking at things like regional carbon offsets and whatnot that could happen through these data sets. So there's a lot of potential, and I think a lot of opportunity for partnership now that we kind of have our baseline data all ready to go. So offers on the table.
Yeah, that's great. And also in Avra Valley, you have that opportunity to work with the Regional Flood Control District and really get a lot of benefits, as you say, carbon capture, tree inventory, all that, but really managing those lands in a way that benefits the city and your draft environmental habitat conservation plan as well. They would benefit from your input, I know. Thank you both.
Well, thank you very much for that exciting presentation. My computer froze at one point and I missed a tiny bit, but I think that I got most of it. So really appreciate that. And if nobody has other questions, I'd like to move us on to agenda item 5. I saw a hand out of the corner of my eye. Where did that hand come from?
It was Charles.
Well,
But
that was me. That was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Oh, Blue, by the way, excellent talk. And thank you for bringing up the carbon fixation aspect, all of you. That's something I'm doing in the mining industry, and I have done that type of work with offsets going back to the Kyoto protocols. So I have some expertise in that area.
awesome. Good to know. Thanks, Charles.
All right. So we're going to move on to item 5. Hannah sent out some copies of the Environmental Planning Advisory Committee top environmental issues list. There was one copy that had highlights on it. I don't think it captured all the changes when I looked through it. So I'd like to open us up to a conversation now about the changes to see if we have concerns or are going to be ready to vote today. I know there's recommended approval is here on the agenda, but I think there's a lot to have a conversation about. So I have my thoughts, but I'd like to open it up to other members of the committee first. So if people have any thoughts on this document, please raise your hand and I'll try to call on folks in the order in which your hands get raised.
Madam Chair, I do have a short presentation, and if you would like me to go through that first.
Let's start with that. Sorry about that, Hannah. I should have asked.
No worries. Thank you. Let me see if I can get advanced to the next slide here. There we go. All right. Hello again, everyone. So yeah, for this item, I'm just going to provide a brief presentation on the updated final draft of the EPAC top environmental issues list for 2025. So at the previous meeting, I did provide an overview of the process, but I'll just go through it quickly again, just as a reminder of kind of what the process looks like for updating the issues list and kind of where we're at today. So the process for updating the issues list for 2025, that started back in September of last year. The approved issues list for 2024 was sent to members in advance of our October meeting, just so folks could refamiliarize themselves with the content and the issues. In October of last year, EPAC and subcommittee members had the opportunity to provide initial feedback on the list of potential updates and comments. And then, so as PAG staff, we took those comments, we put that into an initial draft for members and subcommittee members to review. So that was sent out for another review in November of last year. Any additional comments and feedback we received, we incorporated that into a final draft to our ability, and that was presented to EPAC members at the December meeting, which was December 12th. So there was some discussion and motions made at that meeting. So ultimately, the members voted to postpone adoption pending some changes, which I will discuss in the next slide. So today, an updated final draft is being presented to the committee for potential approval. So the issues list was included in the meeting packet that was posted online. And then on Friday, I did send out a version with highlights that updated or that showed the updates and the changes that were made from the version that was presented to the committee in December. So this reflected the conversation, or those updates reflected the conversation as well as the motion. So the updated draft reflects the updated text based on discussion and the motion at the December meeting. So just as a reminder, this is an action item to recommend approval of the final draft of EPAC's top environmental issues list for 2025. In this slide, I do just want to point out some of the changes or the main changes that were made to the list based on the version that was presented at the December meeting. So again, that email that was sent Friday had the version with the highlights. Hopefully you got that and had a chance to review. But the introduction was expanded to clarify adherence to state and federal regulations. There's a sentence added there. There was also a portion, in addition to the introduction, kind of towards the end, that was expanded to address balancing regional environmental planning recommendations with the needs and benefits of public and private stakeholders, and of course, environmental well-being. Based on the motion, the noise and light pollution was included as a topic under the stewardship and enhancement issue. So this included specific actions that PAG member jurisdictions take to address this issue, as well as the desire to share information on best practices and compliance with regulations. And so that was added based on the motion. And then there was some changes to the wildlife connectivity language as well. That was updated based on the motion and discussion at the last meeting. All right, and that concludes my brief presentation. Again, this is an action item to recommend approval of the top environmental issues list for 2025, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Hannah, can you share a screen with the current draft on it so people can follow along when we're taking comments and discussion?
Yes, I can. Let me see if I'm able to do that.
And I thought I saw Chris's hand up before. But now I don't. While Hannah's getting that. Oh, Chris is unmuting. Chris, you have...
I'll wait, as I think we can just go through it once Hannah gets it up. And that might
if I could get screen sharing permission for moderators, thank you. Try this one more time here. I'm sharing screen. No, that is not the right screen. Sorry about that. Let me try one more time. Okay, I think.
Okay, yeah, we can see
it. Is that showing up as the issues list for everyone?
Yeah. All right, so Chris, and then if other people want to raise their hands, I am writing down stack in order in which I see your hands, so we'll make sure to get to everybody. And if the thing you want to discuss is on a different page, if you can direct Hannah to scroll there, that would be helpful. Chris, did you want to speak?
Okay, I'll start. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I had submitted to Hannah a comment regarding both noise and light pollution, few sentences for each, much as we've done with all of these topics. And I really don't know that the manner in which the sentence covering both, the single sentence covering both, has been inserted in stewardship addresses my intentions in bringing him up, both of those topics up as topics for consideration. Doesn't mention the best available science, does not mention the fact that there is a joint multi-jurisdictional committee reviewing this now, does not mention potential presentation, for instance, in light pollution by Dr. Green at the university, which I think, since he's an expert in the astronomy field, would be useful. And so I would prefer not to have that included under stewardship, and I would prefer to have it called out, the same with noise pollution, as separate issues for public health and safety as well as environmental concerns. Both of these are literally public health and safety as well as environmental concerns. And I think, we need to update our information base and share that information. And then the jurisdictions, of course, will do what they wish, but our job is to bring these topics forward for discussion and presentation and information, hopefully with the best available practices, and then let the larger committee make those determinations. Thank you, Madam Chair. That
Thanks.
starts me off.
And Chris, do you have a written version of the language that you'd like with the appropriate heading that you'd like somewhere? Or could you write it if you don't already have it written up? Chris, you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to answer.
Sorry, I was trying to look it up on my phone.
Okay.
So I have a Word doc that I sent to Hannah in my email to her. And if I can just find that, I can, or Hannah may have that. I can send it to Hannah if she does not have it now. And I'll be happy to resend it to her.
Could we, oh, is my internet working? Could we potentially share screens right now, Hannah? Like if you have the issues list so that people can see that section? I know everyone was sent the documents, but it might be helpful.
It's currently on the 3rd page of the document. Yep. Hannah, do you have the language that Chris sent you to also share that so we can see that?
Yeah, give me 1 minute here.
Yeah, of
Sorry.
course. Sorry, put you on
Juggling some screens.
And just to let you all know, I am scrolling back and forth through the attendees list and the screen to see if I see hands. Right now, I don't see other hands, which is good because it makes me think that everybody's considering comments one at a time before deciding they need to say something. But I'm looking for your hands.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Oh, hey, Jeanette, see your hand.
Thank you. I don't know if it's going to be time efficient to share the actual emails, but we're always open to a motion. So that might be a way to move forward, unless Christina has her language readily available.
Thank you for your input, Jeanette. I think if we had a lot of comments, I would be kind of pushing this more, but since nobody else's hands are up yet, or we can take other comments while we're trying to get this language, if that works for folks. Does anybody else have follow-up to this that you can talk about before seeing the language, or other comments about the proposed top issues list?
Madam Chair, this is Chris, and I have found it, and so I'm sending a copy now as an attachment to an email to Hannah and yourself, Madam Chair. And so somebody who's much better able to handle the technology than I can address it. Okay, that email is sent. So
Okay.
hopefully that will do it.
Charles, I do see your hand, but I'm waiting for Hannah to get that language up. But you are in my stack.
Okay.
Would you like me to just read it while she's posting it?
Sure, if it's not too long. I personally need to actually read things, but I know other people work on hearing things. So if you want to read it, that's fine.
Great. The first is artificial light at night, or the parentheses, ALLEN is the acronym used. Outdoor lighting has many legitimate uses that have benefited society. However, it often leads to illumination at times and locations that are unnecessary, excessive, intrusive, or harmful. Those times are light pollution. Night is no longer dark for many people in Pima County. Both the amount of light pollution and its geographic extent continue to increase, causing worsening impacts to both human and ecological health. Wasted light emission consumes vast amounts of electricity with associated financial costs and greenhouse gas emissions, not to mention adverse impacts to astronomy and ecotourism, two regional economic drivers. Education, careful design, appropriate use of technology, and effective regulation can ensure that we retain the benefits of artificial light at night while minimizing its harmful effects. So that is the light pollution piece. And as I say, there are ordinances, there is a process in review. Noise pollution is even more brief. Noise pollution is any unwanted or disturbing sound that affects the health and well-being of humans and other organisms. Airplanes, leaf blowers, air conditioners, pounding music, construction equipment, street traffic, barking dogs, sirens, and even vibrations, inaudible noise, can have adverse effects. For over 50 years, U.S. agencies such as the EPA have discerned or deemed noise pollution a, quote, growing danger to the health and welfare of the nation's population, end quote. The European Environmental Agency reports that noise ranks second only to air pollution as the environmental exposure most harmful to public health. Yet the threats posed by noise remain often underestimated, according to the International Commission on Biological Effects of Noise. So that's the blurb on noise pollution. And I would move that both of those be incorporated.
You made a motion, so I guess at this point we need to see if there's a second.
I'm
And
happy to
Jessica, your
wait.
hand too, so I put you in stack. Sorry, what,
I'm
Chris?
happy to wait so people can see it, as you said.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that maybe we don't do a motion on that yet. So are you withdrawing your motion?
I'll withdraw it for the moment. Yes, Madam Chair.
So I had Charles's hand up and Jessica's hand up. Are those comments on what Chris just raised, or are they other issues? If they're comments now, please. Yep.
Oh, hi. No, there are other issues. Again, I wanted to talk about equity language and things. I can wait till later on. This is very good.
Charles.
Thank
And
you, Madam.
Jessica, was your comment?
Yes, mine's a comment. I guess I'm curious, where exactly is this going? Because is it going right in the yellow highlighted that is on screen? All of that, because I would like to see it in that place, because it doesn't, forgive me, but it doesn't necessarily completely make sense to me. And I do need to see it written so I can understand it. Just that huge chunk being read to me, I didn't catch it all. Forgive me, but just hearing it doesn't quite make sense to me. I need to hear it and see it being read. I'm just one of those people.
Yeah, I think Hannah could put it in the chat.
And Jessica, I think I can address some of that. I'm also a reader, so I appreciate that. But what Chris's comment was that this doesn't belong in that section, but that it belongs in a standalone section. And I see that this says, address surface transportation related noise and light pollution. Chris is saying this is more than just surface transportation related.
Okay.
But I would love to see it in writing before we have a vote on it as well. So I agree with your request to see it in writing. I'm not a great listener myself. I see Alexandra Chavez's hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. So I just more of a question with regards to the process for this, in what we're trying to wordsmith at this time. And just to clarify, I mean, I believe we had an opportunity to do this, and then before it was as a final draft. I think there was a Word document that we were tracking changes. I could be wrong on that, but it was provided to us. And then we did have a chance to look at it again. So in terms of efficiency for making these changes and tracking them, Is there a better process that we could do, or have more um, maybe a true deadline pencils down effort? My concern, building off of that, my concern is we are trying to fine tune, get this just right, which I definitely respect and agree with. But then the committee doesn't meet that often. So then how fruitful would this effort be in the long run?
Thank you for your comment. I'm going to go back to Hannah on what the process was for this. And Brendan, I see your hand up as well, so we'll get to you next.
Abby, this is Jeanette. I can answer that while Hannah is pulling up the language on a screen share. So yeah, Alex, you made a good point. So the way the language is put in right now as staff shared allows for this issue to come to future meetings as a discussion item where we can speak to the experts and collaborate and hear more about the research and the things that are done in this space. So as it is in the issues list, we can have these discussions that Christina and others are bringing to the table, and whoever those experts might be. And that's the role that our staff plays, is to try to organize those speakers, and the members of this committee have been very helpful in bringing folks like Blue and others to the table to collaborate and present. So in the issues list, we try not to really elaborate too much on the issue, but present the issue and then allow for those collaborations and discussions to happen as we can get speakers to come. So we've heard a lot of future agenda items come forward from the committee. We do our best to get speakers for those. Some people commit and then they, have conflicts and back out. So, our agendas are, that's always been a challenge, is to get the items on the agenda and get the speakers. But yeah, I think Hannah's going to try to pull up that language, and, we're open to a motion from the committee. We also have Christina's, what she read on record. So whatever the pleasure of the committee is. Hopefully that was helpful.
I think it was helpful, Jeanette. Brendan, does your comment relate to this item? Okay.
It does. I appreciate Jeanette's comments. I don't know that noise or light belong as a standalone. I think stewardship and enhancement is just fine.
Okay. Thank you, Brendan. Can everybody see that? Hannah's got that language up there now.
Yeah, let me know if I need to zoom in a little bit more.
Give people a minute to read that.
Madam Chair, if I can, I know Hannah made an effort since the December meeting to speak with the folks that made the comments at the last meeting, and had several email exchanges and conversations with those folks as they were available. And so we folded that in as best as we could to kind of balance all those different concerns. And so yeah, there's a lot of intricacies to the process and how we get an issues list out here that balances all of that. But there was a lot of conversation and back and forth emails that also helped get us to this point.
Thanks, Jeanette. I see Becca's hand up. Becca, is this related to this, or should I keep you in stack for another issue?
This is related to this language.
Okay.
And just kind of, given the reference or the inclusion of airplanes with these other sources, I would just have to say that we would need to probably comment a little bit further on that. Commercial airports like Tucson Airport, we operate under noise programs that are mandated by federal regulation. We already review compatible uses around the airports to make sure that they're in alignment with noise contours. These are programs we've been required to have by federal law for many decades. So to just kind of lump airplanes in with these other kind of noise sources, I guess in a way, in a means of saying we're going to generally address all of these sources together. I don't know how appropriate that is, but we would definitely have to just work on the language a little bit to at least acknowledge the fact that we operate under a different set of regulations and a different set of criteria, probably in terms of noise, if you want to bring the air industry into this conversation.
I appreciate that, Becca. This is Chris. I appreciate your comment. And that's true for both the commercial as well as the Air Force.
Yeah.
My thought was frankly more to the controversies around the Air Force and not,
Sure.
not Tucson International at all. But I would also not be adverse to having that language modified to exclude airplanes. The whole idea here is, you know, we do have ordinances that address these things, but they are outdated and we have new information. And I was just giving examples of things that can impact people's well-being. So that was all my intent, certainly not to get in the way of you or your industry or the feds.
Yeah, no, just something we have to jump out when, airplanes and noise and the programs that we operate under are probably a little different, but they're well established and we can provide information or language if it's necessary here. So, okay, thank you.
Outstanding.
And I'd like to kind of bring some of these comments back together to see if we can move on. But Jeanette just addressed, I think, some of what Alexandra brought up, which is that, yes, some of this was public and we have had opportunities to make changes. Some of these changes we are only seeing since last week because they happened through private email exchanges with members of the committee and Hannah trying to coalesce everything. My suggestion for this portion, I'm also not necessarily convinced it needs to be a standalone section outside of stewardship and enhancement, but I certainly see that the current language that puts this under surface transportation isn't what Chris's intent was. So I'm wondering if there isn't a way, Chris, where we could include sort of a shorter version that addresses both of these with less specifics, but is still maybe a standalone paragraph within stewardship that isn't just about surface transportation. And that doesn't have quite the same level of detail in here. Those to me read as more reasons why this needs to be in there than the actual language that needs to be in there. So I'm wondering if we can get a shorter version that just sort of says, these are issues, these are environmental issues, there are laws, there are committees, these should be within our priorities as a standalone paragraph. I know that sounds a little vague, but I do agree that we're not supposed to have a ton of specifics in this document. And I'm wondering then if we couldn't see a draft of that language before we have a vote in this, see this in writing. Would that address your concerns, Chris?
Yes, it specifically is not a surface traffic issue. It is a much, much broader issue from my perspective. But I am happy to work to refine it and to shorten it. I think I like the beginning, the first part of the artificial light at night. And I think the first two sentences are fine of the second paragraph. And then we could have that discussion at a different time. I mean, I'd be willing to cut that, or if that would meet with the committee's approval as regards noise pollution. I could go with the first sentence and the for over 50 years sentence, perhaps. And this, yeah, 50 years, and then that sentence following, and I can drop the rest of it. So I think it could be shortened considerably of both of them, if that is the pleasure of the committee.
That addresses my concerns. Does anybody else who raised a comment or now have a comment, would that work for you, or are there remaining concerns?
I believe identifying both artificial light and noise pollution is subjective, that it is harmful. This is just subjective in nature.
Yeah, and I think, Brendan, that Chris's point is that there's actually scientific studies on this, so it wouldn't be subjective. It would be based on the science and the organizations working on this. Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, Madam Chair.
But even artificial light, I mean, if there's a outdoor lighting code that's taking place right now. There's arguments to be made about public safety issues around that as well. So I mean, to cite one side of this is I have contentions with.
Well, the science is very clear and it's universal and it's around the world and it's overwhelming. But the discussion regarding how we address these things certainly is, everybody can have their opinion. I am interested in having the actual information, the science represented so that the jurisdictions can have a broader conversation regarding it.
I think that, Brendan, when this does come up for presentations, I mean, public safety can come up. I think if this says that it's science-based, we have a guideline. So I don't know if there's a suggestion that you would have for the language on that would address your concerns. Brendan?
Not at this time. I mean, I just disagree that it has harmful effects.
Jeanette, I see your hand up again. I want to see if anybody else who hasn't spoken yet has anything to say about this. I see none. Jeanette, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I think both Chris and Brendan have really good points, although on opposite sides. And I think that was the staff recommendation. I think that was our goal, is to put the issue on the list for discussion so that we can have the conversations, bring in the experts, and have the conversation on what's harmful, what's not. And then also, I think on this topic, I think Brendan made a good point, is that, who has the regulatory authority over light and noise and those different roles. So the city has a role, the county has a role, the airport authority, the Air Force Base, those regulatory roles are kind of all very distinct. And so I think it's an opportunity to bring people on all sides of the issue that are trying to balance growth and development and other needs of the community with technology and things that are out there, and how we can be just develop as a more advanced community. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there, that was kind of the intent of our language, is to be able to bring the folks that have a regulatory role. I think Becca would be a great example of that. People that represent housing, that's kind of the role of PAG, and the space that we can address with the issues list is to bring all that diversity and all those interests to the table. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with Chris. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with Brendan. But I think we can all agree that there's a lot of competing interests. There's a lot of problems that can be solved, but there's also a lot of innovation that is happening at our jurisdiction level and in the agencies that have jurisdiction over regulating these types of things. So anyway, that was part of the intent of, our language, is to put it out there so we can have these discussions, but also bring all the interests to the table, and talk about the innovations, the science, and the leadership that we are seeing in our community. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette. I'm going to go to Mead, and then Brendan, I see your hands up again, so we'll let you talk again if you have something else to say after that. Mead?
I have been doing the issues list for 19 years now, and I wanted to suggest that some things I've helped in the past are to emphasize, kind of like what Jeanette was saying, but like a small, tidy way to state that would be that we look for win-win solutions in best practices. And I love how Chris brought up that this is about health and well-being. And I think that's a key point that maybe we didn't touch on in our shorter version, that helps show that environmental regulations are made for human health as well as wildlife health in some cases. So I just wanted to point out that I heard that the health and well-being and that are the point of looking at those best practices, and that the win-win solutions, that tends to be how we phrase it in our resolutions in the past, is that we want all stakeholders to find a common solution. And those innovations do exist, like the lighting that just points the light where it's needed, that the way the humans on the ground feel safe and it doesn't pollute beyond where it's needed. That actually simple practices that are innovative that do exist to achieve everyone's goals.
You, Mead. I'm going to go back to Brendan, and then I'm going to make a suggestion for how we wrap up and move on to the next issue. So, Brendan?
Appreciate it. Yeah, I think an argument can be made on any side, whether it's artificial light and we talk about harmful effects, but also the public safety. But then when it comes to noise pollution, there's plenty of different ordinances, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, on that have when construction start times can start and stop and so forth. But furthermore, as it pertains to harmful effects, I mean, this has an impact on when construction industry can begin. And right now, OSHA and other jurisdictions are talking about heat ordinances. And so the ability to start and stop. So harmful effects to who? To the average citizen, or to the construction worker, or the people who are building our homes? So, I mean, yeah, I think there's point counterpoint on all of these topics. But I just hope that those who the selection committee are bringing on and addressing some of these conversations do offer a point counterpoint and look at all sides of this. That would really be appreciated. Thank you.
Brendan, I really
I have
appreciate
no objection to any of that. I have no objection to having a broader conversation. And the heat ordinance is a very good point. Might require starting earlier, first light. I understand that. I'm not adverse to any of that. I'm suggesting that science has moved on. We have a lot more data. Updating these things across jurisdictions is happening, is being considered, and there's an opportunity here to provide information for a broader conversation, in particular to not just the EPAC members, but the members of the governing bodies as well.
Thank you. So my suggestion, and then I do see your hand up, Jeanette, again, but I'm going to make my suggestion, and if you need to talk, you can talk. Brendan, I think those are really helpful comments. I don't think that those are a reason why these issues shouldn't be on the issues list. Those preclude an automatic conclusion, but the issues list isn't a conclusion. The issues list is a priority and things that we're looking at. So I think particularly, the heat ordinance is a great point. When this comes up, we're going to have these conversations about balance. My suggestion is still that Chris figure out a way to put these in here as issues of concern for human health, safety, and the environment, and that we keep them on here. I'd like to see them put together, because to me, they kind of go together, but maybe they don't. But just changing the current language that makes this as a street transportation issue. And then I'd like to see that in writing, maybe 2 or 3 sentences for each issue for us before the next meeting. That is my proposal. If that works for folks, if it doesn't work for folks, let me know. If it does work for folks, I'm going to ask for other feedback on the issues list now. Seeing no hands, I'm going to say that that's what we're doing for now. Does anybody have anything else on the proposed issues list that they would like to raise?
Madam Chair, is that a motion to table this, or
Well, I don't think
just want to clarify.
Yeah, we don't have a motion to vote on this yet.
No, I guess that's what I'm asking. Did Chris want to make a motion, or did the committee want a motion to table it again? That way we know. That just gives us direction.
I'll defer to Chris, and then Jessica, I see your hand.
I would go ahead and move to table these 2 items, and I will draft some smaller, more brief comment and send it to you, and perhaps you could send it to the committee so that we could have that language available for everyone to review prior to any future action on it. That's what I thought would happen, but it didn't. So I would be happy though to table it. And I will send within the day, I will send other language to staff.
So do you need a second to table the motion? Is that a motion?
There wasn't a motion, so I'm
Are we
still
just
like,
tabling
so
it
I don't
then?
know if there's a table.
Okay. It's not a motion then.
Do you need a motion?
I think we all know what we mean here, and so I think that relying
Okay.
on Robert's rules is for clarity and not as a crutch.
Okay.
I think we all know that what we're talking about is not voting on this until we've seen this in writing, right? Jessica, did you have something to add?
Sorry, no, I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to make sure we were not voting on this because we need more time.
I hope and think that that's what we're doing. And if someone from PAG staff wants to give me a little more direction, but I think there hasn't been a motion to vote on this yet. So we don't need to table it and we don't need a second. All right.
No, Abby, if I can just, I know there were a couple other issues I think Chuck wanted to talk about.
I know, Jeanette, I have the stack of people who had their hands up about other issues.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you want to go through those and just get those comments for us, and then that would be great. Thanks.
That's my plan. So the next person I had with a different issue was Charles. Then I had Jessica, and then me if there's nobody else. Me, I said not need, just for clarification. So Charles, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and everyone for attending. And again, I'm going to encourage all of us to keep using equity as we have. Please do not be cowed by the political machinations and things that are going on. We are more likely to probably, I would guess, see pressure come from Phoenix and the state government than, or, you know, from Washington, D.C. at our level. But last time I introduced myself, I have worked with the FBI since 2010 in bioterrorism and drinking water protection. I resigned from that because of things that are going on. We all have to make decisions. And so this is a very confusing time in history, but please keep using equity in our communications. I think that's really important for who we are. That's all.
Thank you, Charles. And I think equity is on the list there. Hannah, I just shot you a message if you can put the main list back
Yes.
up. Thank you.
Sorry, I was taking notes. I'll reshare that.
Jessica, you had your hand up earlier, I think, for something other than Chris's comment. So you have the floor again.
No, Madam Chair, I did not.
Oh, okay. Since I'm facilitating, I don't want to interrupt other people. Does anybody else have another issue that they want to raise from this? I'm happy to go last. Alexandra.
Hi, not an issue for this, but I do have another meeting to go to, so I just wanted to check in with regards to quorum and if we're voting on anything. I can happy to stay on for a few more minutes, but I have a hard stop at 11:40.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. Hannah, can you let us know about quorum? And I think we are not voting on anything, Alexandra.
Yeah, so I'm just checking here. We still have City of Tucson, Town of Sarita, Pima County.
This is Andrew. I need to drop off.
So this is Jessica. I think I shared in an email. I'm bouncing back and forth between two meetings. So I ask that you not include me as part of quorum.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. So how are we without the three of them, Hannah?
No, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get a list so it's easier to see. So we still have Oro Valley, Pima County, we have Lydia from the city, Town of Sarita, and Marana. So we still have 5 for quorum, which is what we need.
Okay. And for the people who are dropping off, we really appreciate you being on. I do want to say that it's going to be my goal to bring this back after people have had a chance to read all the suggestions in writing. We don't want to surprise anybody. And also it's going to be my suggestion on future agenda items that we have our conversations, discussion, and decision items first before we have our informational presentations at future meetings, just so you are not surprised when you come back on. So since we still can discuss this for now, I do want to see if anybody has other comments on the top environmental issues planning list so we can have that out in a conversation. So please raise your hand and we will call on you if you do, because mine are going to be really boring. So I don't see any hands, so I am taking the floor myself for this. So I have some concerns about some of the legal and legal adjacent language that has made it into the issues list. Hannah, if you can share the screen, I will bring this up specifically. So you can scroll back to the beginning. I've got them going through multiple pages. So the yellow on the top there, accordingly, nothing in this document shall conflict with federal or state laws, rules, or regulations. Any provision found in conflict shall be deemed null and void and unattainable. I'm concerned about that language because that is the baseline of how laws work in general, is that if they are not legal, they cannot stand. We don't make laws, we make recommendations. So to the extent that we even make recommendations. So the recommendations of this committee should be going to lawmakers to implement them into law. I think that us preemptively shutting ourselves down, particularly in this very confusing legal climate, and not making suggestions. This also raises the question for me, the passive voice in the last sentence there, any provision found to be in conflict, that raises the question of found by whom. I don't think this language is necessary, and I think that it's chilling. So I would suggest that we not have that in there. I'm going to go through all of my suggestions on this, and then Brendan, I do see your hand. Can you keep scrolling down, Hannah? Because I've got more on the last paragraph. So the last paragraph, I think that this is, so many concerns in here. I do have concerns about the language of balanced benefits to private and public stakeholders. Again, environmental policy is for human health and environmental health. We have many different stakeholders on this committee, and I think that creates balance, but I think that putting that in our mission statement is limiting and possibly in conflict with the laws that guide some of us. I work for Pima County Department of Environmental Quality and regulatory work, and there has been a yo-yo of authority on cost benefit analysis on the regulatory work that I do. Currently, we are still under orders that say that when we're looking at health considerations, we have to look at health considerations and we can't limit them with cost benefit analyses. That may change, but that's the current law. So I think that attempting to preemptively limit ourselves again is unnecessary from a committee whose goal is to make recommendations, not to make law. I think that meaningful conversations are great, but I think that the cost benefit analysis language is direction that we don't have, and I think it's a little chilling. If you can keep scrolling, I've got something on the next page.
And Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. I'm just double checking quorum.
Yep, definitely.
I think we may have lost it. I apologize. Let me just double check here.
Sure.
City, county. Yeah, unfortunately, looks like Alexandra may have had to jump off a little early. So we do not have quorum anymore. So I might suggest sending any written comments via email that are remaining.
I think we have to end if we don't have quorum. Is that correct?
This is Jessica. I'm still here. If you need me.
Jessica's still here. Do we have quorum, Hannah?
So for quorum, I'm only seeing, yeah, City of Tucson, Town of Marana, Pima County, and Sarita, which is 4.
And you're not counting the citizen representatives for quorum.
I am not. So yeah, unfortunately, we're missing another jurisdictional representative.
Okay. David, you can ask a question.
No, he can't. It's the end of the meeting. We don't have quorum. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
But I'm a jurisdiction.
David's a jurisdiction.
Which
I'm
jurisdiction you are?
ADOT.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So the meeting can continue. That's what I was just trying to say is like, I'm ADOT, I'm a jurisdiction.
Yes, you do. You represent the state. Thank
Then
you.
you guys can keep going.
Thank you. All right. Hannah, if you can scroll to the next screen, I have a comment on the next page. David, your hand's still up, so I will put you in stack if you have a comment, but if you take it, okay. Oops, let's see. Yeah. The last sentence in the first paragraph under equity and environmental justice. I have concerns in this moment about us following all applicable state and federal laws as well as presidential executive orders. Presidential executive orders don't necessarily follow applicable state and federal laws. We are going to be completely hamstrung again if we are trying to follow the authority that we're not necessarily supposed to follow. And again, I come back to this is an advisory committee, not a regulatory committee. So I think that entire sentence should be struck. I think those are all of my comments. Brendan had his hand up before. So Brendan, if you have comments on this, I'd love to hear them. And then if anybody else would like to make comments on this as well, please raise your hand.
Yes, can you go back?
Oh, somebody else. I think.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Sorry, jumping back to quorum. So unfortunately, ADOT is not an official representative on EPAC. So we would not have quorum. They have been included just to participate, but they don't officially represent EPAC on the member list.
Well, folks, according to PAG's updated rules on quorum from last spring that we are being told we have to follow,